Be near me when my light is low, when the blood creeps and the nerves prick and tingle and the heart is sick and all the wheels of being slow. Be near me when the sensuous frame is racked with pangs that conquer trust, and time a maniac scattering dust, and life a fury slinging flame. The man who wrote those lines, Alfred Tennyson, suffered the greatest emotional blow of his life in his early 20s. It was that blow which caused him to write the long elegy from which the lines come. But in order to see Tennyson, and indeed the whole Victorian age, in perspective, we have to go back closer to the time at which they were written. For Tennyson's In Memoriam, like Wordsworth's Prelude, wasn't published until 1850. In 1837, when Victoria became queen, she inherited as poet laureate a poet who by then seemed only slightly less ludicrous than Henry James Pye, his predecessor. Robert Southey had been pouring out vast quantities of verse and prose for more years than most people could remember. But in 1837 there were few survivors. Coleridge, Byron, Shelley and Keats, all dead. Southey himself had worked so hard that he was suffering from what was called softening of the brain. Wordsworth was still alive, aged 67, and his brain wasn't soft at all. It was hard, resolute, testily reactionary, and capable of producing verse after verse. It may have looked a dead period or a blank period, but the new men, those whom we know as Victorians, were there with talent and ambition and a potential audience. In the year of Victoria's coronation, Alfred Tennyson was 28. It was a 2-volume collection of poems in 1842 that made a wide audience realize that a powerful new poet had arrived. But Alfred himself was still suffering the blow I mentioned at the beginning of this program, the death of his close friend, Arthur Hallam. Both were in their early 20s when Hallam died. They'd been at Cambridge together, and what had grown between them was what a later, more prurient age might call homosexual love, totally unphysical but highly emotional in its devotion. Within a few weeks of Hallam's death, Tennyson began to write an elegiac poem, In Memoriam, which was to occupy him on and off the next 12 or 15 years. Here are 5 sections from what Tennyson himself was to call many years later as being rather the cry of the whole human race than mine.
Dark house, by which once more I stand, here in the long, unlovely street. Doors, where my heart was used to beat so quickly, waiting for a hand that can be clasped no more. Behold me, for I cannot sleep, and like a guilty thing I creep at earliest morning to the door. He is not here. But far away the noise of life begins again, and ghastly through the drizzling rain, on the bald street breaks the blank day. The path by which we twain did go, which led by tracts that pleased us well, through 4 sweet years arose and fell, from flower to flower, from snow to snow. And we with singing cheered the way, and crowned with all the season lent, from April on to April went, and glad at heart from May to May. But where the path we walked began to slant the 5th autumnal slope, as we descended, following hope, there sat the shadow feared of man, who broke our fair companionship, and spread his mantle dark and cold, and wrapped thee formless in the fold, and dulled the murmur on thy lip, and bore thee where I could not see nor follow, though I walk in haste, and think that somewhere in the waste the shadow sits and waits for me. Be near me when my light is low, when the blood creeps and the nerves prick and tingle and the heart is sick and all the wheels of being slow. Be near me when the sensuous frame is racked with pangs that conquer trust, and time, a maniac scattering dust, and life, a fury slinging flame. Be near me when my faith is dry, and men the flies of latter spring that lay their eggs and sting and sing and weave their petty cells and die. Be near me when I fade away, to point the term of human strife, and on the low dark verge of life, the twilight of eternal day. Unwatched, the garden bough shall sway, the tender blossom flutter down. Unloved, that beech will gather brown, this maple burn itself away. Unloved, the sunflower, shining fair, ray round with flames her disk of seed, and many a rose carnation feed with summer spice the humming air. Unloved by many a sandy bar, the brook shall babble down the plain. At noon, or when the lesser wane is twisting round the polar star. Uncared for, gird the windy grove, and flood the haunts of hern and crake, or into silver arrows break the sailing moon in creek and cove. Till from the garden and the wild a fresh association blow, and year by year the landscape grow familiar to the stranger's child. As year by year the laborer tills his wonted glebe or lops the glades, and year by year our memory fades from all the circle of the hills. Doors, where my heart was used to beat so quickly, not as one that weeps, I come once more. The city sleeps. I smell the meadow in the street. I hear a chirp of birds. I see, betwixt the black fronts long withdrawn, a light blue lane of early dawn, and think of early days and thee, and bless thee, for thy lips are bland, and bright the friendship of thine eye, and in my thoughts, with scarce a sigh, I take the pressure of thine hand.
The Victorian period was a great age of elegies, poems of death and love, and death in love. It was also the first in our history, when women took a significant and important place as poets. The wife of Robert Browning, we'll come to him in a moment, was better known and had a higher reputation than he did for many years. Elizabeth Barrett Browning's verse novel, Aurora Leigh, was one of the great successes of the mid-century. And the three Bronte sisters, Charlotte, Emily, and Anne, all wrote poems as well as novels. A lot of these poems were written almost as exercises, as part of the imaginary kingdom called Gondal, which they themselves invented. In Emily Bronte's poem, The Visionary, you feel the same strange and secret powers as in Wuthering Heights. Wind, snow, an isolated house, something imminent and inexplicable beyond the lamp on the window.
Silent is the house, all are laid asleep. One alone looks out o'er the snow wreaths deep, watching every cloud, dreading every breeze that whirls the wildering drift and bends the groaning trees. Cheerful is the hearth, soft the matted floor, not one shivering gust creeps through pane or door. The little lamp burns straight, its rays shoot strong and far, I trim it well to be the wanderer's guiding star. Frown, my haughty sire, chide my angry dame, set your slaves to spy, threaten me with shame, but neither sire nor dame nor prying serf shall know what angel nightly tracks that waste of frozen snow. What I love shall come like visitant of air, safe in secret power from lurking human snare. What loves me, no word of mine shall e'er betray, though for faith unstained my life must forfeit pay. Burn then, little lamp, glimmer straight and clear. Hush, a rustling wing stirs, methinks, the air. He for whom I wait thus ever comes to me. Strange power, I trust thy might. Trust thou my constancy.
Later in the century, Christina Rossetti was also part of a remarkable literary family. The sister of Dante Gabriel Rossetti, one of the founders of that group of painters and writers known as the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. Many of her poems of elegiac devotion, lost love, and regret may be as much part of the passionate imagination as Emily Bronte's poem. But we do well not to confuse authenticity with autobiography, or to see all emotion as tending towards what nowadays is called confessional poetry. Does it really matter who this poem is addressed to, or whether it was addressed to a real person at all?
When I am dead, my dearest, sing no sad songs for me. Plant thou no roses at my head, nor shady cypress tree. Be the green grass above me, with showers and dewdrops wet. And if thou wilt, remember, and if thou wilt, forget. I shall not see the shadows. I shall not feel the rain. I shall not hear the nightingale sing on as if in pain. And dreaming through the twilight that doth not rise nor set, haply I may remember, and haply may forget.
The Victorians were the great literary entertainers, tellers of spellbinding tales and singers of songs. This was the age of Dickens and Mendelssohn, and of a new large audience for literature and music, a much bigger cultivated class than had ever existed before. Tennyson was part of all this, a man who gave a willing public a wide variety of what they wanted: stories, sentiment, patriotism, and sheer musical pleasure, as well as the elegiac meditations of In Memoriam. Robert Browning was a storyteller too, often, as in his novel-length poem The Ring and the Book, more copious even in his storytelling than Tennyson. But his best poems of this kind are like strangely self-contained incidents from some lost play, a moment of reflection or self-revelation from which we, the audience, have to grasp its surroundings. Such is My Last Duchess, in which an Italian Renaissance princeling is showing a painting of his late wife to some representative of his prospective new wife's family. We are plunged straight into the snobbish and unscrupulous maneuvering of this odious man, a speaking likeness from the past brought so vividly to life.
That's My Last Duchess, painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now. Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. Will please you sit and look at her? I said Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance, but to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I, and seemed as they would ask me, if they durst, how such a glance came there. So not the first are you to turn and ask thus. Sir, 'twas not her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek. Perhaps Fra Pandolf chanced to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half-flush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whate'er she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. Sir, it was all one. My favor at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, the bough of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode with round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech, or blush at least. She thanked men, good, but thanked somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift. Who'd stoop to blame this sort of trifling, even had you skill in speech, which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such an one, and say, just this or that in you disgusts me, here you miss, or there exceed the mark, and if she let herself be lessoned so, nor plainly set her wits to yours forsooth, and made excuse, e'en then would be some stooping. And I choose never to stoop. Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, whene'er I passed her, but who passed without much the same smile? This grew. I gave commands. Then all smiles stopped together. There she stands, as if alive. Will please you rise. We'll meet the company below then. I repeat, the Count your master's known munificence is ample warrant that no just pretence of mine for dowry will be disallowed, though his fair daughter's self, as I avowed at starting, is my object. Nay, we'll go together down, sir. Notice Neptune, though, taming a seahorse, thought a rarity, which Klaus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me.
There's a confident power in such a portrait, which goes far beyond fatuous comments on Browning's supposed optimism. But as the century went on, doubt began to erode religious faith, and we find a new troubled romanticism, not convinced by the old orthodoxies, but unsure of the individual and of individual passions too. One of the poets we particularly turn to here is Matthew Arnold. Arnold was a product of the high-minded, duty-ridden early Victorian intellectual aristocracy, dissatisfied with the bland Anglicanism of his day, but unable to find any firm substitute for it. Matthew Arnold confronted this loss directly in his key poem, Dover Beach. And here the setting, the descriptiveness, the glance back towards classical Greece, the moralizing, all these blend together with the greatest authority.
The sea is calm tonight. The tide is full. The moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. Come to the windows. Sweet is the night air. Only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land, listen. You hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return up the high strand, begin and cease and then again begin with tremulous cadence slow and bring the eternal note of sadness in. Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. The sea of faith was once too at the full, and round earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. But now I only hear its melancholy, long, withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind down the vast edges drear and naked shingles of the world. Ah, love, let us be true to one another. For the world, which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, has really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And we are here as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night.
To some people, for example the Pre-Raphaelites, such as Christina Rossetti's brother Dante Gabriel, art and created beauty could seem a substitute for lost religious faith. Art itself could sometimes seem a religion. Later in the 19th century, there was to be the catchphrase, art for art's sake. When Tennyson died in 1892, and the question of who was to be the next poet laureate was being canvassed, Queen Victoria is reported to have said, "I hear that Mr. Swinburne is the best poet in my dominions." Well, Algernon Charles Swinburne didn't in fact get the job. A very minor and rather ridiculous Tory journalist called Alfred Austin was eventually appointed. But Swinburne was certainly wildly popular, particularly among the young, who loved him partly for his sexual and religious unorthodoxy, which is probably why he wasn't given the laureateship, but chiefly for his hypnotically beautiful rhythms, saying mysterious things in wholly seductive ways, as in the Garden of Proserpine, from which these stanzas come. Here where the world is quiet, here where all trouble seems, dead winds and spent waves riot in doubtful dreams of dreams, I watch the green field growing, for reaping folk and sowing, for harvest time and mowing, a sleepy world of streams. I am tired of tears and laughter, and men that laugh and weep, of what may come hereafter, for men that sow to reap. I am weary of days and hours, blown buds of barren flowers, desires and dreams and powers, and everything but sleep. Pale beyond porch and portal, crowned with calm leaves, she stands, who gathers all things mortal with cold immortal hands. Her languid lips are sweeter than love's who fears to greet her, to men that mix and meet her from many times and lands. From too much love of living, from hope and fear set free, we thank with brief thanksgiving, whatever gods may be, that no life lives forever, that dead men rise up never, that even the weariest river winds somewhere safe to sea. Then star nor sun shall waken, nor any change of light, nor sound of waters shaken, nor any sound or sight, nor wintry leaves, nor vernal, nor days, nor things diurnal, only the sleep eternal in an eternal night.